Hi everyone, welcome to Talulah Hubs. I'm really super excited to be in the company of two amazing authors, Sydney Kale and Kath Almond. Kath has written this beautiful book called New Moon Tree Wisdom, which we're going to go deep diving into. And of course, Sydney Kale we've had on the show before, who's author of I Garden, Becoming Written, and The Love Language of Plants, and another one which I recently found on her website. So I'll have all the links in the podcast below, so you can have a look at it there. So welcome. As we were talking before we went live, I'm so excited, so thrilled. And I was sharing with both Kath and Sydney that I'm actually sitting in a room that's also now become the forest that I work with in a coastal forest here on the east coast of Australia. So we wanted to start with the conversation with Becoming Written. So Sydney, can you just share a little bit about that journey? And we know you're doing a dissertation for your PhD, is that right?
Yes, I'm
Yeah,
deep into working on that at the moment.
yeah. So Becoming Written, can you share a little bit about that and the journey that took you into that story?
Yeah, that book was kind of written on accident, not on accident, in that every time I sat down to write, I intended to write something, but I didn't realize until it was time to publish the book that I realized I had an archive of writings that I could now publish into a book. And then it became something a little bit different. But it was about a year, an archival year of writing in my home and about myself and about plants and my journey and my relationship with plants. And it was very much a non-academic outlet for me to say all the things that I had inside of me that I can't necessarily say in academia. And so it was kind of like publishing a diary. I don't really keep a diary, but they were the most intimate and personal writings to me, just because I felt like in that book I am louder. I am the loudest voice in the book, which in other books I feel like plants are louder. There's someone else that's speaking um, more than I am, and that was very much me.
Yeah, okay. And Kath, I read in there, and I had a maple tree come and visit me right before the podcast and also last night. And so it asked me to start the journey with you about the story with the maple that I think is outside your window. So would you like to share with the audience about that?
Oh my God, I love the question and that you bring maple. Yeah, back into my heart. Funny thing is, maple is not outside my window anymore. In between publishing the book and now, I moved back to Aotearoa, New Zealand, and maple is actually in my ancestral home in Germany, and yeah, has been with me there, I guess, outside my window since the age of 2. And now I'm, yeah, on the ancestral home of Te Atiawa and Taranaki Whanui, Kiti Upuko Tika and Ngati Toa Rangatira. And it's just outside Wellington, Te Whanganui Atara in the outskirts. And, it is very funny. And I'm becoming a bit teary because yeah, Maple is not with me here as to I could just, look outside the window and see him and be with him. But well, I'm meeting other new friends like Makrokapa and
Yeah, I know microcapa.
and Rimu and our neighbors just planted a lemon tree and a feijoa tree outside our home, which feels like a really warm, welcoming present. And those trees are not native to my ancestral home, Germany, and so that feels very exotic and special. However, what I want to say with regards to maple is it's funny, he and so many other of my tree friends have been with me all my life, but I'm hearing an echo. Do you hear an echo?
No, it's okay here. Yeah.
Okay, good. Sorry. Just hearing myself try. Sorry.
Yeah.
Um, But I only recently became open to receive them as my friends and be open to be in this communion with them just a few years ago. And you know they have been my friends all my life, but I wasn't just open to receive their messages and to receive their love because I guess I was so preoccupied with those other life narratives that has been given to us. And so, yeah, I'm glad that he touched your heart in whatever way,
Yeah,
because
it
that
did.
feels so connecting. Thank
Yeah,
you.
it is. And it's funny because that tree had a very loud voice and it just stood actually at the foot of my bed. And then while it's being present, becoming written kept coming up. And it's interesting, Sydney, when you were saying, you know, because that book is your loudest, that's you speaking out loud. And I think what I've been thrilled to meet you both is because you speak openly about having friends of trees and that you can hear and listen. You articulate both very differently, but yet very much similar as well. And it's so exciting to be in the presence of people who are open about that. And I think, Sydney, when you just said, you know, that's where your loudest voice comes through, which is probably why they said becoming written, talk about that first. Because last night I had an elder tree in this coastal forest, and it's an Angophora costata, and it's a very big, gnarly, and they get twisted and nodule, and it said, well, you need to write this song, and you need to do it now and get it published before this interview. And I went, oh, okay. And I wrote one draft and I didn't like it. And then I wrote another one. I thought, oh, that's it. And then I had to put it to music. And the music, one is very Indigenous sounds. It's very strong, like really strong. And, you know, in your New Moon Tree Wisdom, it also speaks about the grief, you know, and the climate changing and all that sort of thing. And it's funny because I did two versions of the music. One that was very soft and very, very floaty, and the other one was very grounded and rooted in the ground, like very strong beats to it. And then in the last line, it says, dance within me, and it's a really strong ending to the song. And I think it's in honor of both of you because it's sharing the wisdom that you have enabled your voice with them to speak loudly and put these beautiful books together, all of them, and share it with a wide audience, because a lot of people are nervous to speak out loud about communicating, talking with the plants, because it's one thing to talk with the plants, but it's a whole other thing to have actually them communicate back to you and you can articulate it in words. And I think this podcast is that message to recognize and honor the fact that it's been happening through centuries, eons actually, because in that realm we're never separate. So of course we can communicate with everything. It's a natural flow. And so, Sydney, you're starting off becoming written, and that's your loudest voice. And also with your studies and putting that into the broader spectrum and brushstrokes of academia, the mother tree that I work with is essential. It's essential. And she wanted to actually ask you, Kath, to share a little bit more about your evolutionary flow when you were creating and writing the New Moon Tree Wisdom, and how you found that process as it unfolded. And then, Sydney, she's got some questions for you as well.
I so love that the mother tree is asking this question because when Sydney was sharing about becoming written earlier, I was like, oh yeah, that sounds so familiar. So New Moon Tree Wisdom actually started as a monthly Substack publication. With every new moon, I would commune with a different tree friend of mine and just, yeah, make myself open to receive their messages and see what kind of story wants to flow. And while reading, you might have noticed that sometimes my voice isn't in there at all. I'm just kind of like the conduit of like trying to, I guess, transcipher what I have received into words that we understand. And sometimes it is a dialogue, yes, or it is just me and my experiences, right? And so It all came to me in a very intuitive way. I'm a very intuitive woman, and sometimes I can only explain in hindsight why I did what I did, and maybe sometimes just years after I can explain, oh, this is why I did that. Okay, I understand now. But yeah, I'm really good, and I'm practicing and learning more to trust my intuition and follow my intuition. And so, in the beginning, when I conceived this idea of bringing my love for the universe and the moon and my very close relationship with the moon together with my love for trees, I kind of like got very, I guess, busy and thought, oh, I need a plan, and I started like planning out the whole year in advance. And with every new moon, I kind of like threw my ideas all over like out of the window because the trees basically guided me to who am I going to visit or not. Just as an example, I guess. I mean, I knew right from the beginning that with the first new moon of that year, I wanted to go and see the birch tree. That was so clear. There was no other tree in my heart that was calling me. But for instance, the story with the ash tree is still such a surprise to me because I don't have had an ash tree friend like known to me in my, I guess, closest vicinity. But ash tree came into my heart and into my mind and lingered there. And I'm like, okay, this is weird, but I actually want to go and talk to the elm tree.
Yeah.
And I did not go and talk to the elm tree. And I was like traveling, like not far away, but traveling a bit for I think a weekend or so. And this is where like a grove of ash trees was. And I'm like, okay, now I understand why you guys were already in my, I guess, sort of awareness. I'm here. Let's see, let's write. So yeah, I guess that is that. But only at the end of this year, and I can only say definitely inspired by Sydney and my friendship to Sydney. I thought, oh my goodness, this is so beautiful. Why do I not just publish it as a book? It's almost too easy not to do it. I almost want to say, and too beautiful not to do it, right? And I
Yeah.
guess this process gave me the opportunity to also have it as audio recordings because I was recording every story with my initial Substack posts, and
Yeah.
people can listen to it. And I thought, okay, this is so beautiful to connect it and actually have those opportunities woven through the book that people can also listen to it while they actually read the book. And so, yeah, I didn't know that I was writing a book.
Yeah, I think that's often because life unfolds, and there's a story in our life all the time with many, many tributaries, like the branches of a tree. You've got many, many branches. I thought it was really intuitive and very clever how you put the QR codes, which I used. I used that as
Nice.
well.
Oh, that
But you
makes me
actually, when you're
happy.
reading it, you felt you were on that journey, and it's the same when I read Sydney's books. Like I fell in love. I mean, I'm in love with nature, obviously, but the love language of plants. It's always that phrase is always ringing through my brain. And then I garden. That was funny because I read books back to front. And of course, that really was really good because there's a back part where you can read forward and there's a front, which is really fascinating. And then Becoming Written was a good story because it's your voice being the loudest. And of course, one of the things we often forget is to let it out, be proud and let the voice out. We get stuck. We don't know whether we should share it. We don't know whether it's going to be well received. And then one thing you taught me, Sydney, was it doesn't matter. I'm just putting it out there. If people like it, great. If they don't, they don't. Of course, everyone will love it. But that's the thing. And we often don't, because when we take something as our natural flow, it's just so natural. We don't think to do anything with it, or it just sits within us. And the maple tree, what it was sharing with me last night with you, is that well, it's not to miss because there's no separation, is to know the love is always there. And the love, whether you're somewhere else or somewhere here, I'm always there within you, which I thought was really lovely. And I always find that emotional quite a strong connection, and it's an emotive connection. I always connect that with water because our eyes will flow with water. And then that's the rivers and the streams in nature itself. And so that brings us back to becoming written, Sydney, because when you're sharing what you're sharing in such a diverse community where it's reaching people of all different walks of life, all different methodologies, all different languages, because academia has it's like botany, that's a particular language, not always easy to master. And with what you're doing with academia, your language is not just academic, it's everyday use of what we already live in our natural world. And the eloquence that you share with that is really sublime. It's just amazing. But when you were, because you wrote 2 books and published them quite quickly, so what did you find was the challenge or was there any challenges when you were writing? And that's probably to both of you, because when you're putting yourself out there and you're releasing something into a wider community and it's global and cosmic as well, what was the feeling behind that? And for Kath, how did the moon cycles affect you? And for Sydney, because you've got to hunker down, root down deep and get this project done for yourself, this writing, what are the current challenges, and where do you see now moving forward with these books going forward? Where do you see yourselves? There was a lot in that.
Yes, I can go first and then I'll hand it off to you, Kath. First, I wanted to say I really appreciate that you brought up water because although Kath and I first connected over plants, I think it was the first or second time that Kath and I got together that she said, "What about water? Can we talk about water?" And we spent a long time exploring water, and then that relationship kind of naturally evaporated. Um, but water is still there, and we talk about all kinds of different things now. But water was a big part of our relationship in the beginning, and maybe a way of exploring each other and our friendship too. Um, but okay, now let me think about the questions, the questions that you asked me. I think it was going back to the love language of plants, which is a book that you didn't ask me about, but when I published that book, I was absolutely terrified because suddenly people were going to be reading my work, which was like reading my thoughts. And the biggest obstacle and the scariest part of it was just simply putting that part of myself out there. And it's become easier now that I'm 4 books in. I feel more comfortable being vulnerable and intimate in such a public way. And I think it's still something that catches me a little bit when I realize that, oh, you're about to publish something that really came from deep inside of you, and that's not a place that anyone has access to unless you give them access. And I'm about to give someone access to that, and I don't know how they're going to interpret it, and I don't know how they're going to feel. Um, but now, especially with becoming written and iGarden, what I was most concerned about was making sure that I was honoring where those books came from and publishing them in a way that I felt like I was doing the service that they were asking me to do, or I was doing right by them. Um, because I did write and publish them very quickly, and there was part of me that thought, well, that feels irresponsible. But then there was another part of me that thought, well, if that's how they want to be published, then let's write them and get them out, and you'll do your best, and it'll be okay. But I think that's kind of the idea with becoming written, that phrase, which actually came from the Love Language of Plants book. The subtitle of the book is Stories of Becoming, written by a human and her plants. And I showed that to a friend, and she said, "What does becoming written mean?" And I said, well, that's not what it says. There's a comma between becoming and written. It's 2 different phrases. But then I wrote these books, and becoming written became something to me. And when I write, I am becoming written when I write, and so is plant voice, and so are all of these things and these beings and these places that I'm in relationship with. And so it matters a lot to me how I write and how I participate in the becoming written of, I guess, kind of my own personal mythology and my own personal experience of the world. And I want to make sure that I do that in the best way possible. But I think I've learned that is actually not very difficult. And the only thing that you have to do that well is to listen and pay attention and be responsive in a responsible way and just honor
Mm.
what is coming to you. There's not a formula other than being true to yourself, which also means being true to whoever I and my writing is in conversation with.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. I think being authentic. It doesn't matter what else is going on outside, but being authentic in your own flow, because that resonates with people. And I think that's a gift to free yourself up to be able to do that, because a lot of people still struggle with that. So thank you for that share. It's really amazing. And Kath, with New Moon, because it's co-authored with the trees, and even just like with Sydney with Becoming Written and the authenticity, to state so clearly that it's co-authored with the trees. The trees wanted to honour you through someone else, and say thank you. And but just being brave to actually put that in writing and share that. It does take bravery. It does take courage, because it's stepping out of a different type of comfort zone into creating a new comfort zone. And one of the things that Boris taught me was that, you can feel the moist moss below your feet, and I'm hugging you within my trunk, and then I sprout through you, which is really lovely. And so the maple, I don't know, the birch and pine are in the background, but the maple has just got a loud voice today. Wanted you to share a magical moment it had with you, because it's still with you even though you're in a different country. Because it's always in his heart, its heart, so to speak. So it said, what was the story behind the new moon? And because it said that there's a very heartfelt song within the new moon that you resonate with. There's a story. There's a story there.
There's a story there, and I feel, yeah, I feel the water present, but also like, yeah, all of our tree friends indeed. And I love how this, yeah, Sydney's note, I want to say, ended on authenticity and just stepping out of, I guess, an old comfort zone into a new comfort zone in a way, because the way I'm living my life now, I guess openly sharing my love for the rest of life, is the only way that feels true to me. And if I would live my life, or I guess express my voice in any different way, it would be without integrity. And I think my deep relationship with Grandmother Moon is a big part of it all, and I'm so glad that you're asking about her, because um, I don't even know how many years ago it is now, but I do honor my moon time, and it has little to do with the trees, I want to say. But whenever I am menstruating, I go into a metaphorical moon time cave, and I do not communicate with anyone unless it is like, I guess, truly needed. And of course, I do communicate with my husband. We live together, and so there's some communication happening, but not so much to the outside world. I go into my inner sanctuary and truly listen to what is happening within me, and yeah, in a way, hibernate for a few days during my inner winter. And since I'm doing this for maybe 60 moons now. I don't know, a few years. I have come to get to know myself so much more intimate and so much more in depth, I want to say, that anything I would do that doesn't feel true to me as like a massive misstep, and I know that I would not be in flow with life anymore. And so I guess I was able to tap into a certain kind of wisdom, which I so deeply appreciate and do not want to miss in my life anymore. I do know that my monthly bleeding will end rather sooner than later. However, I also know that I will continue following the rhythm of Grandmother Moon, which is, I guess, probably one of the easiest things you can do when you live a rather independent life. And even so, if you don't live in, I guess, an independent life, I'm just thinking about as of this week, I started going back to uni. It's a long-term journey, and I'm pursuing my PhD in ecolinguistics. But I have a few years to prepare myself for it, and yeah, it's a big transition. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm not that independent, like just being a writer,
Yeah.
anymore. I have some commitments now, but I do
Yeah.
know that I will be able to accommodate this non-negotiable almost ceremony with the moon I have,
Yeah.
and be able to yeah, integrate it all, and that gives me so much inner strength as to I know where I am at the right moment right now, and I'm here, and I'm supposed to do whatever I'm doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if that really gives
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
a
Because
response and
the
the
moon,
story you
well,
were looking for, but this is my
yeah,
relationship with Grandmother Moon.
yeah, because everyone sees and perceives the sun and the moon differently, you know. Some people love the full moon, some people, there's different anecdotes around the moon, and it's an intimate experience, and intimacy is experienced in different people in different ways. So because that was the title, and because there was a depth of your own wisdom that was coming through, the love language of the plants in your book, wanted to share that and have you voice out loud, because many people will resonate with that. And then the other thing that was coming up for you, Sydney, was because I know you've got a relatively new garden that you're new to. And the last time we caught up, there was fungi, and fungi was coming up. So one of the things a fungi that's no longer in your garden wanted to say was, there's one, it said, you miss me. You went into the garden, you didn't see me. But the other thing it said, what's the journey now with your becoming written and the voicing around what you're doing with your studies? Where do I sit as the fungi? Where do I sit within your studies, in your writing, but your lyrical nature that shines through and shines so bright? What have you understood by being in the garden with me? Where do you now sit with all that, and how do you integrate that element, which is all of what is, into your writing now? Because I think the last time you were talking about fungi in the wall, and there's mold and those sorts of things, and fungi has such a different thing. We use it in penicillin, we use it in so many things, but your direct experience has shifted your writing. So the fungi said. So I just wanted you to share a little bit more about your uniqueness and how you perceive, whether it's the mold on the wall or a new fungi that's in the garden that comes and goes before you even get a chance to witness it.
Yeah, I think I am someone who feels very partial to flowers. I love flowers, and I spend a lot of time in my garden cultivating and paying attention to flowers. And sometimes that by accident becomes more important than anything else. But I say that because I think whether you're meeting with flowers or a tree or different parts of a plant or fungi, the energy is very different and it feels very different. And fungi, although they have their fruiting bodies above ground, they're very much they feel very below ground, within the earth species. And I frankly haven't spent a lot of time in that space. I don't spend a lot of time with roots because I love flowers, because I think they're pretty and I like airy energy and I love being connected with the sky. And I think as an herbalist as well, I don't typically work with roots a lot because they are so difficult to access. It's a lot of work to make a tincture out of roots because there's so much more digging and there's a lot more toil involved than walking outside with my pruners and my basket and going to pick flowers. And so I think um, there's this world underground with roots and fungi and darkness that um, it wants me to pay attention, and I think I have to pay attention, especially as a gardener. The soil is so important, and soil is so much more than decaying matter. There's so much that's happening under there that is incredibly vital to so many things. And I think I've been able to connect with them a little bit because I really hate, I don't like using the word hate, but I strongly dislike gardening with gloves. And so that is, I get to, when I garden, spend time with my hands in the soil, and I always have soil caked under my fingernails, and that's a really good feeling to me. Um, and so I think fungi, although I tend to get distracted often by everything that's happening above the soil, they have the tendency to take me under, which feels different. It's while it is a lively and bustling place, it feels quiet and it feels dense and it feels heavier, more like a feeling of being held than a feeling of flying off into the sunset with the flowers. Um, and so it feels different. And so I think there's a lot of different places that writing and who you write with can take you. And perhaps I'll be writing a little bit more with fungi and going to darker, heavier places, not in the sense of dark and heavy as in bad, because I think that can at times have the connotation, but I mean genuinely darkness and heaviness for what they are, which can be very joyful and very happy, and they can be whatever they want to be, but let them be that and not be afraid of those places. I think that answered your question. When
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
answer
Oh,
your
the
questions, I
fungus
move so
question.
far away, I forget where we started.
It's so funny because the maple was really a loud voice last night and this morning, and then the fungi was coming. As I'm listening to you both, the fungi said, "Don't forget me, don't forget me, don't forget me." So that was a question. Also, always everyone. I think the joy in our journey is allowing whatever needs to come out to come out. And the hardest thing I think for many of us, if not most of us, is that to not worry about when it's out there, just let it be out there, not then think about, oh, how did that go? Did I say something wrong? Did I ask the right questions? Did all those gazillion questions? And I guess one of the things the fungi's taught me is just let go. Just let go. Because it's there for a fleeting moment and then it's gone. And once you've released something, you're already into your next phase of whatever. And with the new moon tree wisdom, the pine tree that you speak about in here, there's an airy element to it as well. But it said to ask you, you felt my air, but you also felt my roots, but you also felt the strength of my trunk. So we're into the feeling intuitive sensitivity, no matter what gender a human being is, and no matter how we sometimes genderize plants and nature. We're all that oneness and in a non-gender yet genderized feeling. So intuitively, from the pine connection that you had, the pine tree connection, and then interconnected with the birch tree, what was at the base energy of your own being that really grounded you into self-acceptance? That's for you, Kath.
Oh, yeah, I feel it. I so feel it in my heart. Thank you for this question. Also um, the connection with the birch tree as in when the moment it was clear for me that the last story of this book or of this series will be with a pine. I had to start giggling because the pine, she already appeared in my first story with the Birchtree, and I'm like, oh my God, like how cyclical is my life? I accept, right? I just surrender to it. But um, you know, all the trees I mentioned in the book, or all the trees that are part of the book, and others as well, they are all very close to my heart. But I think the longest as an intimate connection or relationship I have is with the pines, with my home forest, the pine forest. And um, I guess in this process of writing and over the many visitors I could have with the forest, there was a deep reckoning in me with that there's life in monocultures as well, and the little life that there is, and maybe even, I guess, receding life in a way. I gotta have to honor it. I gotta have to love it to the last breath of the last tree, and the many non-human beings who call it also their home forest. And I just gotta have to love it and there was a deep surrendering yeah, something I guess I haven't mentioned here today is yeah, I am a recovering climate activist, and for my climate activism time, I have been in a fighting mode against the systems, against the governments, against anyone who couldn't see what is so wrong with the way we live our lives. And even though, of course, to some degree, I still hold that activism, not pleasure, but what is the word I wanted to say? Passion. Thank you.
It is a passionate, it's an emotive thing. You know, when you're
I,
connected to nature, it's an emotional connection.
it is, and so I still hold that activism passion in me, but the energy has changed. It is not that exhausting anymore, and it's the opposite, as in how I'm active now, and how I put my voice out there now is actually expanding. And I think with that sort of expansion comes a certain level of surrendering and a I really don't care what other people say. It is important for me to bring the voice of water through right now. It is important for me to bring, yeah, the voice of Remus through right now. As in, I have received this message for a reason, and so I need to be able to express it in one way or another. And yeah, when I think of pine, there's a deep surrendering to life in me. And yeah, I'm so glad that I have all these teachers in my life.
Yeah, that was beautifully said. Actually, I felt goosey then.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank
I think
you.
I think the thing is we do, you know, I think being so well written, the both of you, and that is a way of work. Well, it's like a call to nature that then nature asks you to also be its voice, where people can't yet hear nature call. Those who can hear it then become the voice of it in true union, you know, not as something separate or something with your own agenda, but actually as a interconnectivity. And I think that's a gift that both of you honor with just not only yourselves, but the wider species of plants and ecosystems, and then the wider community as human beings. And, you know, can only speak for the realm that I live in, and it's an honor, and I'm so thrilled to have met you both and had the great pleasure of reading your books and listening to podcasts and listening to the audio files. I know I've mentioned it before that QR code in your book is really clever because it does ignite the voice, and then the person reading it hears their own intuitive self come alive, and then you know you get that biofeedback of your own interpretation of where that person reading sits with it, then that grows, blossom and blooms. And Sydney, when you were talking about you love flowers and you love the air, when I worked in field work, botany is such a big thing and being able to identify everything. And as soon as I would go into the field, all that knowledge that you're trained and indoctrinated in saying a specific thing in a certain way would completely leave me. And I would just get so very into the fruits and flowers. I was just, and I'd always get in trouble. Like I would literally get in trouble. You've got to love those leaves, but I was like, but I love the fruit and flowers, because there's such joy in the bursting of the fruit and the blooming of the flowers and then the wilting of them. So they drop their seeds, which is what this song is about. But then the fungi comes in saying, but I am the server of those blooms and I'm the server of those fruiting bodies, because we are the fruits of the labor that, has the cause and effect. And I think that's a thing that's an amazing, kind reminder that we're all that interconnected flow, the threading of the mycelium, which is the same as our endocrine nervous system, so forth, and the big system, had to get the win in. And it's just that constant mirroring of that interconnectedness. And so these books and the zines that you write, Sydney, on your website, Sydney Kale website, which I'll also put the link in, and just even the short sharing of the moon and how it affects, and then how, Kath, you go into that retreat zone, and whether you're male or female, there is a moon cycle with males as well, that when a male person attunes to that, then they know where that. It's like the man cave in Australia. It's a big thing, the man cave, because it's a space where men can just share their emotions in a safe space without being judged by anyone else, which is so important and sometimes lacking in the global community. And so with men, then that space within also is part of that cycle. And then the transcendence of the cycles of the moon into the oneness, which is allowing the sunlight to shine through as the sun rises. And so the stories and the titles of the book and becoming, because that becoming, Sydney, as you shared, was that becoming written, because we're writing our story every microsecond. We've had the great pleasure to read your stories in print, and then through audio, and then through podcasts that you're involved in, and then Substack. So both authors, everyone, are on Substack, so I'll leave the links to that as well. I always run out of time, so I just wanted to sort of round this off. So where do you see yourself moving? I know, Kath, you said you're doing, you're studying, and that's a big undertaking. In Sydney, you're all hands in because you've got a limited time to be able to get that. How does it feel? Because we live in a timelessness that also runs on productivity. So when you're in your own zone and you're writing, you've got that flow. And if you're publishing, self-publishing, then your timelines are your own, methodology. If you're working for a publishing house and you've got that timeline, but in society, everything is time coded. So how, and you're both on times with uni and then getting this work done, Sydney, how do you find your intuitive self shines bright when you've got that constraint? Or do you see it as a constraint, or how do you see it? And how does that help you in your journey?
Shall I go? I can go. This is something that I've had to work on very intentionally. And this year I said no deadlines that I didn't have to have. There are deadlines out there in the world, especially with school. But otherwise, I said no deadlines because I wanted to, if I was going to produce something and put it out in the world, I didn't want a deadline to be a reason why it presented a certain way. And when I wrote Becoming Written in iGarden, I published them on the same day. It was my birthday. And the year before, I had published my first book, The Love Language of Plants, on my birthday. And so I had this date in my head. And it was my own deadline. So no one else was holding me to it. But I said, I have to publish these books on my birthday. And I'm still very proud of the books that I wrote, but I was really I was really crunched for time to make that happen. And then after I did that, I said, okay, we're not going to do that anymore. And I'm not going to force my writing, and I'm not going to force production, and whatever wants to be created will be created. And maybe that will happen in a timely manner and maybe it won't. But if I'm not feeling like something wants to be created, I have the option to either rest or to explore that absence and see where that takes me, if that takes me somewhere else. I personally am still in the process of trying to learn how to let creativity drive what I create and not time. And I still love time. I think time is an interesting concept, and I think I have a relationship with time, and I want to have a relationship with time, but I would like it to be a healthy relationship.
Yeah, not a stressor.
Yes.
Yeah, very important. And how about yourself, Kath? How do you find that time space when you've come into your own, freedom, and then you've still got freedom with what you're doing with your study, but there are constraints because things have to be in at a certain time. How does you find that intuitively, and how do you find that with meeting those timelines effectively?
Well, I want to say I do have a very healthy relationship with time. If you ask me today, this is my response. It might look very different in like a month or so when my first uni deadlines are coming up, and I might run around like a headless chicken, which I doubt. It's not my first time being at uni and managing deadlines, but much of what Sydney shared, and I guess in her in her journey of becoming more intimate with time resonates deeply with me as to I last year I did had a monthly schedule for my Substack publication, which was New Moon Tree Wisdom, right? I mean, the moon comes up every 28 days, so there's something that wants to be produced, and it worked out surprisingly well, I want to say. I was actually very proud of myself how my communion with trees and the moon emerged and developed actually or evolved into what it is. And with me, moving back to Aotearoa, New Zealand at the beginning of this year, it was very clear for me that I do not want to commit to any deadlines that are not necessary. And as a matter of fact, since I'm back, I have on Substack in particular, I have published only one story so far, even though there's another story that is half written, and with every new moon in a way that is still like a cyclical, I guess, frequency in me or rhythm in me as to with regards to publishing. Every new moon, I'm sitting and asking the story as to, do you want to do you want to be published? Do you want to be published with this new moon? And so far, there was no like positive response as to now is the right time to finalize it and put it out there. And so yeah, a few new moons have gone by, and it is in my awareness, and I'm learning to not feel bad about it and not have like this negative self-talk as to, oh, another new moon went by and you didn't publish a story. As
Yeah.
in, I'm trying to very gentle, trying to tell myself this is not the story I want to tell myself, as in, oh, it is just not the right timing. This new moon was not the new moon for the story to be published, and that is fine. I don't know for what reasons this is a flow right now, but I trust that there's something healthy and life-giving and love-giving in it. So that I guess it's part of the surrendering we were speaking about earlier, as to, yeah, I'm just surrendering to all the different time loops that
Yeah.
exist in
Yeah.
my life.
Yeah. 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 Because we do have our own inner story, and sometimes we do bury it ourselves when we feel like we haven't reached something of our own setting of goals. We grind ourselves down instead of saying, well, it doesn't matter, let's just flow on to the next thing. So that conscious awareness, that neuroscience, actually, that quantum field awareness, that we're infinite, and that anything that we place that's a stressor that's causing us an upset can be instantly released. We just got to catch ourselves telling us that story, so we come back into our aligned self and just allow the creativity to flow, because the timelines that are required are cosmic, and therefore they're grounded, because as cosmic people, cosmic beings, interrelated, everything just shows up when it's required and when it's necessary. I guess it reminds me of the 2 books you published really quickly. I loved it because it gave me more to read. It's like when you're really hungry and thirsty for something, you become insatiable and just want to read and read. And it was the same with New Moon Tree Wisdom. What's the next one? And I had, some people, it's sacrilege to dog ear pages, and I totally understand that, but I do dog ear pages a lot because I want to come back to that moment and say, where was that again? Otherwise I have to flick through and I want to go straight there. I want to jump the gun and just go straight there. And I think also I love digital because I work in digital as well with what we do, but I love that feeling of touching the book because the energy is so alive. And when you can find that little nook in the garden, or you find that little space that just you can hibernate and just absorb the words. Sometimes I don't even read them. Sometimes I open a page and I just feel like it's radiating into me. Like I can just think, oh, I'm in that forest. I'm outside that. I'm inside where I can look out to the maple tree, or I'm in Sydney's garden and I can feel the fungi saying, I'm here. Or I can see that beautiful flower. And of course, Sydney, you do your own sketches as well. I love that. There was one in our garden where you've got the photo of the tree and then you've drawn the branches, and I love that because I actually felt that through my being. I felt that you just draw my head and then it was lovely. And that's the thing with what we are as infinite beings. We're animated, and our particles are streaming in all different ways. So the energy is in the written print equally as it is in the voice, equally as it is in the writing through the platforms that everyone's using, and the energy in a podcast. So I wanted to say thank you very much. I know you're both very busy in your life and in everything you're about. So I really value the time that you created, and also just making sure we're all here on time with different time zones and everything. It's my one nervousness. What if I don't show up and I've got my guests, all those sorts of things that the mind stories tell. But I wanted to say thank you so much. And the coastal forest that I create with just is in awe of both of you. We just are so thrilled to be present in your lives in this podcast. So thank you. And to all of you out there, I will have all the links. I'll make sure I get the links for everywhere you can find both Sydney and Kath on this podcast. And I'll have that. We'll be sharing it in YouTube, Patreon, Substack, and my website as well. So thank you so much. And we'll say goodbye to everyone. Thank you, audience, for listening. Bye for now.
Thank you.